All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Hired Labs Coding Bootcamp. We're in week 3, so this is approaching the halfway point of our 6-week course. We've done a lot already. We're going to be doing our web development foundations today, and specifically, well, we're going to be talking about our um, beginning of our web application. So today marks a sort of end of one phase in the first 2 weeks where we talked about the tools generally and materials that we're going to use to build something. We sent out the free resources that have a ton of practice in there that can keep going forward. If you haven't done absolutely every piece of that up to now, that's totally fine. This is sort of a reset point where we're going to start building our application. We're going to lay the foundation for it today, and we'll build over the next few weeks on everything from the previous day. So tomorrow, as a reminder, we have class tomorrow, not Thursday this week. Like last week, we have Wednesday instead of Thursday class because I had a conflict. So I apologize for that. I appreciate your flexibility. We will have Tuesday and Thursday starting next week going forward till the end of the course. But we will be building this application that we start today. So today we are really starting. If you have not done what we've done up to now in Python anywhere, again, you're not required to do that at any point. You can continue to do it on your home device if you prefer. There will be some differences in the way things are called, and you might run into some little errors here and there, and it won't be live on the internet. If you do things with us, along with us, this is going to be live from today onward. So I encourage you to do that, but not absolutely required. All right, so let's do a real quick review before we get hands-on. Most of today is going to be hands-on, following the documentation I sent out earlier as a reference point for what we're going to be doing. But let's do a real quick review of the things that we want to bring forward from what we've done thus far, right? So the major theme that I want to keep hitting is that this is always going to be files and directories. We're going to set up some directories today. We're going to add some files into those directories. We're going to actually start more of that work where we have to pay attention to what files we are in what directories. So we bouncing around between files and directories, building our application because that's what applications are. It's files and directories. So we talked about the syntax of running applications through an entry point. We're going to see that today in action, be able to dissect it a little bit, recognize some of the patterns, and then use that entry point throughout. And in the Django framework that we're using, it has the same entry point that we've been using. And so it'll be another opportunity to observe that in action. And we'll talk more about modularity and how that works in Python, one of the cool features about it. That is something that we talked about in the last 2 weeks. We ended up with algorithms and problem solving and the choices we make. And I know a lot of folks generally ask and have asked, like, how do you know what to write? Or, how do you know which thing to use? And we were talking a little bit earlier before class started and in Discord about approaching things with, say, lists instead of just the straight if, then, or if, elif statements. And what I really want to highlight throughout is that the choices we make are based on the problem we're trying to solve, right? And the context in which we are making that problem, or we're making that decision. So where we're trying to get is going to really inform what it is we do and how we solve those problems. But I want to really hammer home for everybody that it's less important to be able to memorize this and write it off the top of your head than it is to understand where things go and how to find the information you need and go and look it up. The more you do it, the more you practice, you'll be able to recall things and just spout it out of the top of your head. That shouldn't be your goal, though. Your goal should be understanding where things go, how they plug in, and how you can get it. There's no shame in copying and pasting. So again, everything from here forward will have full documentation. So write it along with me, do it along with me, scrap it, start over, copy and paste the documentation if you like. However you do it is fine. Just keep practicing and keep plugging in and keep working on it. Before we press on to a quick handful of theory things before we get hands-on with stuff today, or any questions about stuff that we covered up today, anybody really stuck somewhere that wanted to kind of talk about it? Right? And that's it. Last chance. No more questions after this. No, I'm joking. As they come up, feel free to spout them out. Like always, take yourself off mute, raise your hand, put them in chat. Might take me a second to see it, but that's how we do it. So we are going to be talking about our backend frameworks today. And we're going to talk about Django specifically. But to do that, we need to talk about the web dev stack and what that means and disambiguate some terms. So we talked about a stack already. Who remembers how we talked about a stack so far? We talked about it last time, actually. What is a stack that we've talked about so far? Gonna be perfect. I'm gonna press you to remember this, and I'm gonna tell you it has nothing to do with that. But I do want you to remember the last time we talked about a stack and what that means. Anybody recall? Right? See some efforts at recall and the people that got the videos on. Okay, I'll save you. I'll throw you a lifeline. So it was one of the data structures that we talked about. Wait, we got something in the chat. Maybe this is it. Ah, there we go. I forgot. Okay, good. So the data structures that we talked about last class as when we did the last example of a dishwasher adding plates and a line cook taking the plates off the end. So the last in is the first out of a stack of data.
Oh,
And that is how things like undo functions, the recursive function that we looked at, variables, function calls, all those things are done in a stack. And that's the way the data is stacked up in memory, right? So it's literally just one piece of data is put in there and then another piece is put on top of it in a stack. And then as the computer calls it, it takes the top one off and then it adds more. And that's a stack, right? Everyone remember that now? Okay, cool. I'll take the, I'll take the yeses. All right. So now that we've refreshed our memories on that stack, this stack, not to be confused with that stack. There's two different things. So this web development stack, and we hear about what stack you use or whatever, it's a set of technologies that you are using to accomplish a web development task, right? So a website is a thing, but it could be developed using a number of different technologies. And the stack is really what those technologies are. They fall into three broad categories, right? So there's the back end of the stack, and this is generally things where your users are not going to go. So it's typically not the kind of things that they interact with. And this is a place where you're going to find those general programming languages from our list, things like some version of C or Python. JavaScript is very common to find back here on web development things. You may find it referred to as Node, which is technically, I suppose, a framework, which is where the second layer of these things would be. So these top parts are actual languages. So JavaScript up here under where it says Node, Python, C, these are programming languages that can be used all kinds of places. This next set of icons here is Django and Flask. These are frameworks. So they're built in a language. They're written in one of these languages at the top, but they're designed for a specific thing, web development in this case, right? So the framework we're going to use is Django. It's written in Python. So if you can read Python, you can read Django. If you can write in Python, you can write in Django. It's the same. It uses all those data types that we talked about. It uses classes, modularity. It's set up like a Django or like a Python project is. It's going to use the same entry point. Flask is the same thing. It's built in Python. So if you don't like Django and you decide you want to use Flask because it's like Django but a lighter version of it, somewhat simpler, once you know the patterns of one, you can quickly learn another one. It's very, very simple. But what these do is provide Python code that's already written to accomplish really common tasks in the context of web development, right? So user logins, how to handle things like interactions with databases, which is also a backend concern, or how your URLs are routed, the addresses, how they're located in according to your scheme, and security. All those things are back-end type concerns. So when we talk about our web development stack and the choices we make on what database to use, what framework to use, what language to use, ultimately the framework is written in, that's part of the stack, and there's usually the back-end pieces. Is making sense? Anybody got questions about this? Right?
makes sense.
Sure. So then the front end, the other end of this stack is the place where users are going to interact with things. This is just the place on a website where users are touching things. And this is going to be your HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. These three languages are by far the languages of the web. Anytime you do things on the web, you're going to be touching at a minimum HTML, most likely CSS, and probably a little bit of JavaScript as well. We'll get more into these next week as when we focus on front end, but generally speaking, HTML is going to be your layouts and where things go on the page. CSS is going to be your style sheets that tell things colors, fonts, that kind of stuff. And then JavaScript is going to make things interesting and moving on the page, interactive in some way. Again, broadly speaking, we'll get more detail on that. But those are all front end type concerns. So the places that your users will interact are going to be front end. The functionality and things that they may not directly interact with is going to be back end, but there is some crossover, like submitting forms is going to be touching front end. People have to touch the form and then it goes into the back end to be processed. Yes, Tommy, you got a question.
I'm trying to think of an analogy. So is it like
you know how there's like salespeople and then there's like the middleman. The middleman is just like the person that gets you into it, and then the salespeople is like the back end that actually sells you the product.
Something like that. If you're thinking in a sales team, well, let's go to the analogy that we're going to use here in a minute. Hopefully, it'll concrete this a little bit where everything fits. We're going to use the analogy of a physical building to try to hammer home where these things fit and designing a real building. And maybe hang on to that. Does that work for now?
So like the support beams could be like the back end.
This is more like the space. Like, so this whole area that you're in is like the plot of land of the building. And then the back end is going to be like the back office stuff where not everybody goes. And the front end is going to be like the lobby where everyone goes. You know what I mean? So that's
Yeah,
more kind of front and back end stuff where they interact with each other. You might go to the back end as a bank customer to go talk to somebody in their office, but most often you don't. And that's where like a lot of the business logic and stuff happens. So it's more kind of that analogy. But we're gonna dig into that a little bit more in detail here in just a second, though.
copy
Does
that.
that make sense? Does that make sense though? So far?
Yeah, I kind of get it. Yeah, lobby,
Okay.
and then there's like the back office where the board meetings.
Right, right, right. Cool. So then when people talk about say like they're a back-end developer, again, they're focused on the things that make a website maybe function or web application function or something like that, but they're not typically worried about the colors, the fonts, the layouts of the page, right? That's one of the big differences. The front end is definitely going to be color schemes, layouts, where things are, how big buttons are, what the shape of the button is. Whereas the back end is going to be once you press the button, what happens? What page do you go to? What form are you taken to? What happens with the data from the form? Those are back end type concerns. And then when you put it all together, that's full stack. So what we're going to be doing in this class is full stack development. We're going to do both back end and front end stuff. Today, arguably, what we're going to do today as foundational things are back end type things. So they're things that most people aren't really going to be interacting with and seeing. So one of the things that we handle that we need to really picture what is going on is HTTP. Anybody know what this stands for before we define it without looking it up? Even though I know we all have supercomputers in front of us and in our pockets.
Hypertext Transfer Protocol.
Tom knows this one. Hypertext Transfer Protocol. That's right. And the S is for secure or not. So that's a security level thing. But Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and that's, if we think about again our time in the military, a protocol meaning just like the way you talk, like on the radio, right? How we say you, this is me over, radio check over, Roger out, those sorts of things. The way we pick call signs, all that sort of stuff is a protocol. Hypertext transfer is really just the way files are sent between computers in directories, right? So it's a system that we want to highlight some of these parts of the definition where you route requests from clients to servers. So these are important terms, the request, client, server, and then the responses from servers to clients. So here's a very simple graphic of this. I think we got from Mozilla, which is, the Firefox people, very much web guys. They also use Django. They've got some good tutorial stuff on there. But so this is a good, very simple representation of what we are going to be doing when we write our code and we build our application. So we're going to be writing files over here on the left-hand side in directories. And then somebody on the client side with a browser, which will also be us as we're testing and whatnot, will send a request. We'll tell our server what to do with that request out of our file system. It'll grab the files that we tell it to, and it'll send them back as part of the response. So I want this to be in everybody's mind as we move forward doing this whole process. Any questions about this?
So talking front end and back end, I kind of see this dotted line through the middle of the web server. Um, to the right is going to be the front end
Mhm.
activity, and to the
Yep.
left is going to be the back end activity.
Yes. Yes,
And
exactly.
it includes,
Broadly speaking, that's it. Yeah.
right, that's going to include other activities and going to databases or whatever else might be needed for that.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And any other complex, if you have like API calls to other systems, if you do, like a really cool calculation of your own kind, that's all going to be like back end type stuff. And then this is also good to keep in mind that there is some amount of things like JavaScript things can be done on the client side. So you can shift whose memory is being used for what calculations and where they go, keeping this, again, broad set of things being involved in mind, the client, the web server, and the set of files that you have in the back. Cool. All right, so then I want to talk a little bit about some theoretical things. And one of the readings in the free resources is one of my favorite design books, even though this is not a design course. It's good to conceptualize some of these things. And Tommy's going to kind of hit on your question here in a second of figuring out exactly how we draw an analogy of something that might make a little more sense. But this book's called The Timeless Way of Building. It was written by an architect in, I think, the late 60s or something like that. And he's describing building actual physical buildings and towns, but it's become a cult classic with designing software because the process it applies. It's basically breaking down any building process in the same way as just something that naturally humans do, right? And so trying to get out of the academic overthinking it and just realizing that these are patterns that we use and then we know how to do them naturally, right? So we just apply them to a building task and we could follow this pattern. And one of the ideas that he has in this thing that I think is a great idea to keep in mind as we're doing this and as we do our light sort of on the fly design of our applications, whatever applications we do, is what we want to keep in mind our context, right? So I've been mentioning that context is very important. In that context, though, there's going to be a system of forces that are going to arise. They're going to be in conflict with each other. And that's going to happen in all contexts. There's going to be forces, and what we do as the builders of these systems is we try to come up with a configuration that will allow these systems of forces to resolve themselves. So this is really what our goal is when we make our overall applications and we imagine people going through our systems as if they're walking through buildings, if they're walking through physical spaces. So an example concretely of how this might be is we can think of the context of, again, of our application. We say that like users want to log in and access their stuff. And so the configuration, a common pattern that we use is a sign-in page. Everyone knows what that looks like by now. And this is the kind of thing that a framework like Django will provide for us is these patterns of like a sign-in page where that's standard. We start with that and then we configure it to look and feel like the thing that we want to put it in. But it's getting at this resolution of forces that are in conflict in a context is really the goal with the design. Yes, very good, Tom. Any questions about this as a general concept before we go into the last analogy and then get hands on? Right.
All's good.
Cool. So, Tommy, so this is to your question. Another idea out of the timeless way of building that's very handy to think about in this and is very applicable to software development is dividing a finite space, right? So building, whether it's software or a physical building someplace, is not adding things to the outside, but it's differentiating a space that you already have, right? So the entirety of the thing, the whole precedes the parts. So in the context of a building, like this guy's analogy, when he's talking about, well, not analogy, he's talking about directly in actual buildings. We can think about, say, an office building that we want to build. It's going to start with a plot of land, right? Outside of this dashed dotted line is going to be the city, the hookups, the other streets and things like that. You're going to have certain constraints, like where the street is, which street you could put your entranceway and things like that, right? But this plot of land is what you get to differentiate to design your office building. And in there, you're going to, again, resolve some conflicts, like people are going to have to park someplace. So you know you're going to have a parking lot. It doesn't matter what the shape of that parking lot is just yet. You're going to put off some space for that and differentiate the space within your overall plot of land. Similarly for, like, say you have a main building and then inside that building you got a lobby and then maybe you got some back offices where people are doing some different things. And those are going to have different functions within themselves, right? The lobby might have tellers. It might have, you know, different things depending on what kind of business you have. The offices might be places that people go and have one-on-one conferences. It might be a place they never go, depending on what kind of business you have. But this, again, is differentiating all the way down into smaller and smaller. We're not adding things to the outside of our plot of land, and we're not getting larger. Make sense so far?
I was just going to say that the way you're laying this out, the office building as the example, starts off at a very high level, a building, and then it breaks down into other components that make up the building as you laid out here, parking lot. Because anything associated with parking lot stays there,
Right.
not necessarily with the overall office building, because somebody else can call parking lot and use that code for their setup if you
Well, so
if you design it right, correct?
right, yeah, absolutely. And those things are that's what we talk about, like reusability, right? So if you design a
Yeah.
parking lot or a parking structure that works really well, it could be built on any plot of land that fits that same size, right? So, um, yeah, absolutely. And so if we take this analogy over further, and we draw the connection specifically to like a web application, then this dashed line here, there's the plot of land for us to start with for a building project. This would be like our space on the internet, our domain URL where it exists. And then we're going to start differentiating inside of that with where things belong in our web application, right? So we're going to have things like storage. That's going to have to go someplace associated with it. It may not be inside of the main application that people interact with. Our lobby could be thought of as like the homepage. The back office could be back function sorts of things like interactions with databases. It might be just an intimate sort of space where like a user's profile is and just one user gets to go in there. It's like a locker or something like that, right? So this idea of differentiating a finite space is a good way to think about how these things are all tied together. Is it making sense? Any questions about this? And and then Tommy, to your question earlier, when you think about this front end back end thing, the like the homepage or the lobby would be like the front end sort of stuff where people are, you know, interacting with it, where you're interacting with the public, with users, and the back end would be, say, how the foundation was laid, how things are taken to storage, that kind of stuff. All right. Well, nothing else. That is the end of the theoretical stuff. Let's go get hands on and start actually building some things. So let's get out of this. We're going to go over to Python Anywhere. We don't need this slide deck anymore. And we're going to go today through most of what we're going to do is going to be in our console. We're going to be doing a lot in our console, and we'll be hopping over into some different things in our web tab. We're going to be using our web tab a little bit, well, quite a bit today. Before we get going, I want to demonstrate what we're going to build and then throwing it out and scrapping it. I want to show the process of scrapping it. It's not in the documentation, but it is something I want you all to be comfortable doing as we go through this. If you get hung up somewhere, I want you to be comfortable just throwing it out entirely and starting all the way over, because that's a totally normal thing to do. No problem in doing it, and it's a very simple process. So we'll go and set this up again later. Don't worry about if you don't have anything on the web tab, and you don't have to follow me for this part. First, let's demonstrate what we have. We did this real quick as a demo last week, and I left the site up just to say that we have it still. So here's our site. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to destroy this and all the files that go with it and start with a clean slate. So on our web tab, all the way down at the bottom, we have this delete button. It just says delete a thing. It says, are you sure you want to do that? Say, yes, I am. Let's delete it. And this should take me back to what your web tab should look like if you have not done anything and you've not created any web apps yet. If you have, you might need to throw one out because you can only do one for free. But again, that's your call if you want to follow along with this or not. If your web tab looks like this, awesome. So the other thing that needs to be done to completely.
I don't see that in mine.
You don't see it if you go to web. You don't see something.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I'm sorry.
You see it?
My layout was just slightly different than yours. I have what you have. We're all
yeah, because I was zoomed in to make it a little bit easier to see.
Okay, we're good.
Cool. All right. So then the other thing that needs to be done, if you are going to be throwing stuff out from scratch, again, I don't expect anyone to be at this point right now, but if you are, you would be going to our console, which is where we're going to be doing a lot of work today anyway. So I'm going to open up a console. And there are two directories. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so we can see. So there are two directories in here. I'm just going to hit LS to see what we got. This, you all should probably have this classes.py, main.py, and this PyCache thing, which don't worry too much about right now. This my site and VM we're going to build today, but we need to get rid of those. So I'm going to use a command. It's rm recursive flag. So rm space -r and then F. I'm going to force just in case there's anything protected or trying to hang on forever. And I'm going to put in the two directories that I want to get rid of. So I'm going to get rid of the my site directory and this VM directory. We'll talk about what both of those are. But so those are the steps. So anytime you want to reset, start over, do not hesitate to do it. Don't fear the destruction. It's a good idea. You have to go to your web tab, delete your app, and then come back in here and remove those directories entirely, and it should throw all the files out. So this will probably take a quick second, and then once it does finish doing what it's doing, we will go back to building. There we go. All right. So now clear this up. I'll just show you, should have the same starting point roughly there. That if we did everything from last class, we should have our README, PyCache, classes, and main. We're not going to use classes in main, but that's all we got. All right, let's get going. So I'm going to go mostly off of the documentation that I sent out earlier. If anyone got a chance to look at it, I know I sent it out pretty shortly before class. So again, you're welcome to follow along on that. I may, on purpose, skip some steps. So if you notice me miss something, hang on. We'll see if that's on purpose. If not, just remember for later when we're debugging. But I want to make sure we go through all the debug tools and things that we have available to us. So now that we have a clean slate here, we're going to keep this console open because we're going to be coming back here doing some stuff. I'm going to go back to my web tab, right? So if in two different tabs, I've just over here on my web, I just clicked on web, and it should look roughly like this. Right, zoom in a little bit so yeah, it's easier to read as we move forward. I'm going to click this big blue add a new web app button. It'll give me this first step warning thing that says your web app's domain name is going to be your username, whatever that is, .pythonanywhere.com. This is good to remember. This is going to be the base domain name. So all the URLs that we make, that we push to different places, our about page and whatever is going to start with this / something. So this is like the root of our system that we can consider it that, right? That's good for our purposes. If you want to upgrade and so you get a personalized domain, knock yourself out. Don't need that for this course. So we're just going to hit next. And this is where it says select a web framework. If you're following along, don't click Django yet, even though we just talked about using Django. I want to use manual configuration, including setting up virtual environments, because I want to go through specifically what those things are. And I don't want you to be just stuck with Python anywhere. The manual configuration is going to be more like what you would do pretty much any place that you would do this. So I want to make sure we go through that and you're clear on what files need to be set up, what needs to be set up where. So we're going to do manual configuration on the framework. And once we click on that, it's going to go directly to selected Python version. We'll talk more about versioning at the end of the course. It's very relevant in Python which version you use, and you may run into different versions for different projects. So it's important to choose the right one. For us, the latest version that they have available is fine, even though this is not the latest version that is available. So again, be aware of that. There are newer versions of Python. So if you're going between your version on your computer and this Python Anywhere stuff, there may be some issues, but if they're generally version 3, you should be okay. So we'll do 3.10 for us. And it'll take us this manual
Hard to
configuration.
get there. What you don't the flask or bottle? What was picked?
To get this was manual configuration.
Oh, okay,
Manual configuration.
got it.
And then Python 3.10.
Okay.
So most latest. And then it'll just tell you this thing that says, hey, you did manual configuration. So that means you're going to have to do this WSGI configuration file, or I like to call it a WSGI file. I don't know if anyone says it out loud that way, but I do. It tells you where it is. So this /var/www/ that is a very, very standard place to put this file. So we could overwrite it, put it in some other place, tell it to do all kinds of different things. We'll keep it a little simple, use it by default where it goes, but we are going to get into this file and do some adjustments. This is going to help us serve the web application that we make. So we'll get into that very soon. This is just telling us that we have to be responsible for that since we decided to do manual configuration. Had we selected Django, it would have done that for us. So this is one of the places that it's manual. The other thing is virtual environments, which we will also talk about and set up manually to be clear on what they do, why we use them, and where they go. So all this is telling us is like, hey, heads up, you got to do your own WSGI file and you got to do your own virtual environments. So we're going to hit next after carefully considering our options here. And it's going to take a second to set those things up. And when it's done, it will go to a page that looks very similar to the page that I showed you demoing the application that I had. So at the very top, it says, hey, all done. Your web app is now set up. Here are the details. And it has the link to it right here. It says configuration for, and then there's a hyperlink that's got, should be your username if you're following along, then .pythonanywhere.com. And I can open this in a new tab. Let's go see what happens. And I'll have this page that says hello world. So again, the hello world thing's a standard. I absolutely did not think of that. But this is where we begin. So we have a web app up. We can see our URL up here. We have our HTTP prefix, and then we have our username, pythonanywhere.com. This is our base domain. Cool. So this site, now that I've thrashed it and gotten rid of it, if I refresh it, it changes to the hello world, right? So all that stuff that I got rid of, it's gone. Now, when I go to my page, it is just this hello world thing. Cool. So let's go quick orientation through what's on this page. We're going to go through the settings and set some things up, but I want to show you the parts and pieces that are here. You'll be coming to this frequently as you develop, as you work on things. So let's do that now. All right, so this top, right underneath the configuration for, and then your URL link. This is really good to have. No, you can get to your page. Right beneath that, there's this reload button that anytime you make changes, this is going to push the code back up to the server side so that you can actually serve that to a browser. If you forget this step, you'll be making changes in a file, you'll save that file, and then you won't see them reflected, and you might be beating yourself up as to why. So really get in the habit of reloading. It'll be on a couple other pages. This little best before date, you have a time limit of 3 months that this is live, that your site will be live and active and serve traffic more or less. I mean, it'll be kind of a cold start, but it'll work pretty well. Sometime before that day, if you want to keep it going, just come in here and press the button. So that's what that's doing. Then under traffic, it's got some info on how many people have been to your site. Already got 9. I'm not popular. Not really super important, but good to know. Code. This section is going to be very important for us. This is going to be where our source code is located, how it's found, the main working directory, which will be the reference point for all of our calls going forward. This is going to be the directory that I threw out earlier. So we haven't made this directory yet. We're going to come in here and make and update that setting shortly. But this is also where we find our WSGI file. It's a link to this /var/www and then this lengthy name dot or wsgi.py file. We're going to go in there and make some changes shortly, but this is how you get to it. We'll come back to it. So down from there, virtual env, again, promise we'll get to that in a minute. We'll actually do that next. But I want to highlight here in log files in this section, there's 3 links to log files. And in the middle one, the error log. This is going to be the most important log for you. Access logs and server logs, probably not going to be what you need. When something goes wrong as you're developing, the error log is where you're going to want to look. So keep that in mind. Static file is going to be for next week when we start doing some front end things. So like when we do our JavaScript and whatnot, that'll be in static files. Some of our CSS will be static files. And this is just how those things are loaded. It's kind of a pain in Django. I won't pretend that it does it well, but we'll walk through how it does it. All right, security. Now, this is an interesting section because there are a couple of things in here. One, I'm going to flip to enabled, but it's an option if you want to or not. And the other one, I'm not, but I'm going to tell you what it is when we talk about it, right? So this security section, we talk about how we can have HTTPS certificates. They're automatically provided, and we can force people to, force that interaction, the HTTPS interaction. I have no reason not to do that, so I would encourage you to do that. You flip that to enabled. But again, if you have a reason to keep it on just HTTP for whatever you're doing, you don't have to. The other piece is you can optionally set a username and password. It'll be stored here in plain text, but you can enable a password to be on your site. And if you do, so this right here, if you went to my username, pythonanywhere.com, you should be able to just go to that site and see it. It'll say hello world. If I enable password protection, then I can set, some sort of username. Oh, apparently no dashes. And then some sort of super secure password. It takes anything, apparently. And so then when we do this, if I wanted to have this on here, then this would be a way to protect the site from people going to it before, like as you're developing. If you want to keep developing here and not develop in some other environment and then just push it up to a fully baked site, then it'll ask me for my credentials to get into here. And this, I'm assuming, is JavaScript. We'll do something similar like this pop-up. But so that's, again, an optional way for you to prevent people from going to your site if you don't want to. I'm going to keep that off. I don't want to have to log in every time I go, and I don't really care if anybody goes to our site. And so then below that, there's a way to disable this app if you want to, again, start this one, not throw it out entirely, and then start another one to work on or something like that and keep your limit down. And then if you want to throw it out entirely, here's the delete button. So that's what is on our web tab. Any questions about any of those things before we start adjusting and making changes? All right. So now that we have this, let's focus on the virtual env for now. Let's go back to our console and set this virtual environment up. Let's talk about what those are, why we use them, why it's an important thing to know. And then we'll come back here and do some more changes on the WSGI file to get this web app going. But first, let's go back to our console. And we are going to set up a virtual environment. So in order to talk about virtual environments, I want to talk about this thing called pip, PIP. And it's a recursive, itself is a recursive thing. This is what is called a package manager. So what it's going to do is let us install different types of functionality, different packages in Python, right? So PIP stands for pip install package. And that's also how you use this, right? So generally you do pip and then install and then the name of a package. We'll do that here in a minute. But what I want to show first is list. This is going to show us what packages we already have installed. So I'm just in my regular home spot, and when I do pip list, this should hopefully show something. And there are a whole lot of somethings, right? So there's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of packages in here, right? And that's cool. That's great. This is all the stuff that comes in what we call system packages. So these are available system-wide. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a virtual environment that's going to block off a space for us where these packages are not accessible anymore. And what we're going to do is we're going to put into that environment only the packages we need for our project. The reason we do that is so that those packages will not collide with these packages. Like let's say, for instance, we wanted to use this web test package in our thing, but we don't want to use version 3. This is the version for web test. Let's say we want to use version 2 and it doesn't work with version 3. If we have those both in our system, they'll run into problems. We won't be able to do it, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a virtual environment and we'll show this a little more concretely how this works. Any questions yet on what we're doing conceptually and what we've shown so far with pip and these packages? All right. It's going to be a test later. No, I'm joking. The test is making the thing.
What would be an example of like kind of needing to break those out like that?
Yeah. Sure. So like literally every project you do is going to have its own packages. So anytime you do a Python development task, it should be inside of a virtual environment, like every single time. So this is standard starting point for getting going on anything, because each project, and I'll show you how as we do this, it's going to have its own sets of packages that potentially will conflict, right? So this is just absolutely best practice all the time.
Makes sense.
Cool. All right, so let's set up a virtual environment. So what we're going to do is we're going to do Python. I'm going to put 3, even though, again, not sure it's entirely required, but out of habit for me. So we're going to do Python 3 and then -m because we're going to use a module from Python. And we're going to use the venv, short for virtual environment, module. So when we call this, we can give it whatever name we want to. Any name we like, doesn't matter. I'm going to call it, once again, redundantly, venv. This is what you're going to see in documentation. It used to confuse the hell out of me. This first one is actually the name of the module. This is the name of our virtual environment that we're making. So it can be anything. It's like a variable name. And when I do this, it's going to take a little while. It's going to go and make our virtual environment and create this directory that we can then use and do some things with. So let's give it a second to think about that. And I'll show you how we get in and out of our environment and show you which packages are available. And then we can start adding things to it. Right. So now if I do list to see the contents, we should have next to our main.py file, this venv directory. I can, it's a directory, so I can look inside of it so we can see what's going on inside of there. There's some inner things. The bin directory is one we're going to need, but we don't often need to go directly into this for anything, right? It's just good to know that it is a directory. There's stuff inside of it. All right, so I'm going to clear this up. Now I'm going to show you how to activate and deactivate this to get inside and outside of our virtual environment. So what we're going to do is source, because we're using Linux. This is how you do it in Linux. If you're doing Windows, it's a totally different way of doing this. I won't even know what it would be. But we use source, and it's going to tell our terminal what sources to use. And then we do the name of our virtual environment. And again, I'm using tab complete. So source space, name of the virtual environment, bin, and then activate. And what this is going to do is going to turn on the virtual environment. Erica, yes, you could put your virtual environment in any directory you want. There is a hidden virtual environments directory if you prefer to put it in there, or really anywhere you like. So yeah, that's a good question. I'm putting it here just for ease to find later, but you can put this anywhere. It's kind of an arbitrary choice. But remember where you put it because we're going to need that directory here in a second too. All right, so we source vn bin activate. So that's the name of our virtual environment. And then once I hit enter, you can see that the command prompt changed a little bit. And to the left of our input, we have this set of parentheses with the name of our virtual environment inside of it. That's how we know we're in our virtual environment. Even if we change directories and go somewhere else, we will still be in our environment. So I can go down the root directory, still there. I can come back home, we're still here, right? So it is a directory, but this is really just saying which packages are available to us. Because now if we do pip list, you remember that huge list that I had before of all those packages? Now there's nothing. There's two things. There's pip, there's setup tools. That's it. So this is like a blank slate for us to get started with and use just the things that we need for our specific project. So we're going to add some things to it shortly. But we need to go back and make some changes to our WSGI file before we go any further on this side of the console. So we have our virtual environment set up. And again, for me, if you're doing it the way I am, this is just going to be in our home directory. So /home/username/ and then vn. We need to go tell our web app where to look for that. And then we need to make some other changes to our WSGI file to switch this over into a Django environment once we're ready to actually serve it up as Django. So let's go back and do that. So now that we have our virtual environment, let's enter the path here that we want to use. So again, for me, what I did was I did the /home/username/ and then just VM. So I'm just going to copy this from the above code section where it has the working directory here kind of in the middle. And you know what? I can zoom out so it lines up a little better with what you're probably seeing. So here in the middle where it says working directory, this /home/ and then your username, I'm just going to copy that and then click down here in red where it says enter a virtual env if desired, paste that, and then put the name of my virtual environment, which I used venv, again, just to remind us of which module we're using. Then I'll click a little check mark to save that. And so again, to Erica, to your question before, if you want to put this in some other directory, feel free. Just make sure that you put that directory here. And that you make the directory first. If you try to list the directory before you make it, it'll give you an error that says that doesn't exist. So those are the main things. Make sure your virtual env section refers to your virtual environment. And then let's go make this change to our WSGI file while we're here. So I'm going to go to that by just clicking on this link right here. So it just says WSGI configuration. And when I click on it, it'll take me into the code editor, the text editor, into our example file. So this, if we had clicked Django, it would have just been the Django section we want. But I clicked manual configuration. So this has like all the configurations that we could use. And I wanted to show this as an example of, again, so this is where our Hello World is. This is where it exists. So this is our Hello World app, again, showing on the front end. This is the code for it. So right here, we have just this is technically called a constant because it's all caps, but Python doesn't recognize constants. They're all variables for Python. A constant is just for humans to understand that it's not supposed to change. And then it has this triple string thing with HTML inside of it. These are tags. We'll talk about HTML later, but this is all the stuff that's on the page. And then here's some more, you know,
Sorry,
Python.
Could you repeat where you went? I missed the from after the virtual van. Then I missed where you went.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So you're just going to go to your web tab. And then once you're on this web tab that has all the information for your web app, scroll down to the code section. And then there's this WSGI configuration file. There's a link right here. And that's where I am. So you just click on that link. It'll take you right to the file that I'm looking at.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. And so this is the inside of that file. So this is the WSGI file. And this is the pure WSGI, as it's called, application. So, you know, we don't have to go breaking this down, but this is very similar. It's just a function that defines our application. There's some stuff happening here. There's a response. There's all that kind of stuff happening. And that's all fine and great. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to adjust this. We're going to take all this stuff out. So I'm going to take all those things that are not commented. Again, to remind you, these hash marks, these hashtags are comments. So the interpreter is not reading any of this stuff that's commented. So I'm going to select everything from row 19 down to 47. So all the code that is not commented right now. And you just erase it if you want to. I'm going to comment it. So if you want to just hold down Control and then slash, it'll comment all those lines. And that way you can keep it if you want to look back at your WSGI configuration for whatever reason. But the important part is to make sure that none of those lines are being accessed by your interpreter. So you can erase them if you want. We're not going to need them. Or you can comment them out if you want to use them for reference later. So that's 19 to 47. Somehow get rid of those. And then as we scroll down, it's going to say, you know, below are templates for Django and Flask and some other stuff, right? Then it says a note about virtual environments. It says if you use a virtual environment, set its path, which we already did. It says if you have a custom file and you want to serve it, you know, put it in your home directory. Again, we're not going to mess with all that. We'll use this WSGI file. And we're going to go down to this section that says Django. And we're going to uncomment the Django sections. Now, this is the part that would have been done automatically for us.
Question?
Yeah.
I noticed that in the custom WSGI,
Mhm.
we already have our path. Does that mean it's commented out, but if we uncomment the path, see like you have?
Yeah, we could. Again, yeah, we could just use because when we make our thing, it's going to have a WSGI file in it
Okay.
already. And so like then we could just go further and make sure that that's properly configured and set it up that way. And that's totally fine. We could use that file instead. That's a completely valid option.
Okay.
And then the contents of that file are largely going to be the same as this. It's just going to be references to the directories where things are located and whatnot, right? So it's not going to be a huge difference between doing a custom WSGI file and this one that's here that's built in. So yeah, that's absolutely an option. But so we're gonna go down to this Django section where it's highlighted as Django again to remind us that's what we're using, and just to highlight all of this stuff up to 76 down to 89. So start where it says import OS, and then everything down to application equals get underscore WSGI underscore application. And I'm gonna uncomment all of that. So this is the standard stuff that comes into a WSGI file in Django. So this is the piece we need. And again, if we had hit Django as the framework before, this file would only have this piece in it without any of the rest of the comments that are in here. And you could feel free to erase all those if you want to. But I'm going to save this. So again, what should be accessible are lines 76 to 89 if we didn't erase anything. And double check you don't have any warnings or errors or anything before we move on. That should be the last thing we have to do in this file. And again, I encourage you to come and read this at some point and check out what it's doing. There's some things in here we're definitely going to be using throughout, and I want to highlight. We're about to go and make these directories, but right here, this says assuming your Django settings file, which we're going to get intimately familiar with, is located at /home/hired, you know, your username /mysite/mysite. So there's two levels of the same thing, and then the settings.py. We're going to see that here in a minute, but just, you know, keep in mind there's some redundancy happening. And then also it says this assumes that your manage.py, this is the app entry point in Django, is called manage, not main, but manage.py is at this directory. So we're going to set it up that way so that that's where it is, so that we don't have to repoint things in different ways. And we are going to use my site as the name so we don't have to come in here and update anything, right? So as we go and name things, if you decide to name something else, I will try to highlight when it's best to follow what we are naming it and when you have some leeway to do so. But if you decide to name this something crazy, you name your app something other than my site, remember that you got to come back in here and make it match or else it's going to break. So I'm throwing that out now. Let's go make our directories. So we're going to go back to our console. And we're going to make these directories as it expects, and then all this will magically work together, and we'll be able to see our Django site, and it's going to be great. All right, Tom. Sorry, I hope everything works out. Okay, and we got stuck somewhere that says no virtual env detected. Yeah, it looks like you didn't make a virtual environment. If you tried, and when you say no virtual env detected, you're talking about on your web tab when you try to update that directory. If it gives you that warning, that means you didn't make the virtual environment in your bash console. And to do that, the command is this Python -m, and then the virtual environment, the name of virtual environment. Yeah, tell me, you got a question.
Yeah, so I'm in the bash country. I have the parentheses VNVE or VENV, the time, and then a slash instead of the tilde.
Ah, yeah. So you're in your root directory. So just hit CD with nothing. Just hit CD, then enter, and it'll take you right back to the tilde.
I think.
Yep, for sure. All right. So then, yes, everyone, that's a good thing to mention. Make sure that you are in that directory, the tilde directory, and let's start doing this. We set up our virtual environment, and we've activated our virtual environment. We're inside of it. I guess real quick before we move on, to get out of this, we just type the word deactivate, and it'll take us out of that. So source, name of virtual environment, bin, activate. We'll do this at the beginning of every day to get used to that command, and then deactivate to get out of it and leave. So make sure our virtual environment is active, and we're going to start doing some stuff. So now that we have our virtual environment, let's install some packages. So we're going to do pip install, and then we're going to do Django with a capital D. So pip all lowercase space install all lowercase space Django with a capital D. And if you're following the documentation, I'm going to skip something possibly that might come in handy later to know, but I'm just going to install that for now. This might take a second to type some things, but it's also going to install these other packages. This is, again, highlighting why we want to do a virtual environment. We'll go through and look at what it installs as it goes. But each package, especially bigger packages like Django, that's going to have a whole bunch of stuff in it, will have other packages on which it depends, called dependencies. And so all these packages could conflict with other packages, right? So that's why you always want to put these things into a virtual environment in each project that you're working on to make sure that any version of something doesn't run into a problem with another version of something else. And then this might take us a bit to get that set up. Once it does, we will look at our list. There we go. We know we are done because we got our, it says successfully installed Django. Let's clear this up. And now when we list our packages, we have a whole bunch of other stuff. So we got Django, we got setup tools, we got pip, then we also have this ASCII ref, we got the SQL parse. And so these are the other packages that Django depends on. So these are dependency packages that we need to make sure we don't have conflicts moving forward. All right, so now that we have Django installed, we can start doing some stuff. And the very first thing we want to do is we want to make our project. So to do that, we're going to do Python 3 M, and it's the, again, module flag. So Python 3 space -M, and then Django start project. So Django lowercase space start project, all one word, all lowercase, and then the name of the project. Now this, again, very important that you don't get wild and creative with it and call it something else. We're going to call our site my site. That's the name of the project. I really encourage you to name it this as well. You can name it whatever you want, but I encourage you to name it this. So once I hit enter on this, it's going to create our my site project. And in doing so, if I list the contents of our directory, we now have a my site directory and a virtual environment directory. So now if we go into CD, and you might see in the, I think in the documentation it has doing this together. No, but you may want to add things together with these two ampersands. Like if you want to do make directory and then change directory into it. So CD into my site, you could string those together with two ampersands between the calls, but we'll do some of that stuff later. So right now we're going to change directories into my site so that we have our ~my site as our working directory. And this is where we want to be. Let's just have a look, see what's in here. So now we have our manage.py and an inner my site. If I do ls my site and list what's inside of there, here's our settings.py. And this is the stuff that was referenced in our WSGI file, right? So the directories that we expected to see, here's our /home /username manage.py. We have that right here. It's our manage.py. So that's our app entry point. And then we have our my site settings. So we have my site, inner my site, and then settings right here. So now we've set those things up. We need to go tell our web app where those things are here in this code part. Now that we've made those directories, we need to tell it our source code is there and where our working directory is. So these could be in theoretically different places. You can put them all wherever you like. For us, again, these are just in our home directories. We're going to keep it kind of simple in that regard. So I'm going to start with this working directory and just add my site to the end of it, and then just copy that whole thing. If I could figure out how to copy and paste. I said there's no shame in it, then apparently I can't do it. So I'm going to make the source code directory and my working directory the same. They're going to point to the same directories. All right, so what we did was we did our Django command to create our actual project. This is sort of the default starting point of a project. And then we routed those parts into here. Now, one thing before we move on is we need to update in our settings file one crucial piece for this to work. So this must be updated. So we've been talking about our web app being at this domain, this hired, your username.pythonanywhere.com. We're going to need that exact thing. So copy that from wherever you want to. It could be on your web app tab if you want to copy it from here, but you need your username.pythonanywhere.com. I suggest you copy it, and we're going to go put that into our settings file. So let's open up that settings file in our GUI and drop that in there so that we can actually start serving traffic through that domain. All right, so we're going to go to files now. Now that we know that we have our directories set up, we're looking for our my site directory. And then again, the settings is going to be in the inner my site. So it's going to be /home/username/my site. Again, if you called your application my site, like I suggested you to. And then the settings file should be right in there, settings.py, along with its double score init, which is what makes things modular in Python. We'll see it a lot. Don't worry too much about it. We'll talk about URLs. Here's the WSGI file that comes with it. So again, if we want to use this instead of the one that's built in, you could. But let's go into our settings. Make a change real quick to get this running. This is a crucial change that must be made. So in this file, there are a whole bunch of things that can be adjusted, but this is what comes standard. This is like the boilerplate stuff. Every time you start a Django project, it's going to have the settings.py file in this inner project directory that's named after the outer project directory. That's for a reason. We can talk about why. Mostly so that when you add other what they call applications to this project, and we will do that as we make our to-do list application, the my site, the one that's named after the project, is the place where settings are. It's the only place where settings are for the entire project, right? So there's a reason we call it that redundantly. It comes in handy as the project gets larger. So we're going to do some things here optionally to move this secret key off into another file and do some things with it. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll past a lot of these pieces. We're not going to talk about them just yet. We'll come back to this and talk about it as we go. But I'm going to scroll down to line 28 and then look at this allowed hosts constant. This is a very important step that must be done. We have to add our domain to this allowed hosts. There are a couple ways we could do this. We could just drop an asterisk in here as like anything is allowed, but we don't really want to do that. We want to try to make it just our own site. So what we're going to do is take that domain name, the the username .pythonanywhere.com, and we're going to add it to the allowed hosts as a string. So I'm just going to put a string here in this list. And I don't need the HTTPS part. I don't need a trailing slash. I just need username.pythonanywhere.com as one string inside of our list. All right, and then once we have that, I'm going to save this. And this little recycle button up here, this is the same as that reload button that we had on the web tab. So this is going to reload our source code. So we've saved it here, and this is going to reload it to the server side. So after we make a save, any kind of adjustment that we make, we updated the paths to our working directory in our source code, and we changed a file here, the settings.py file. So we made those changes. Now we push that code up to our source or our server. Now we should be able to go and see how it changed from our pure WSGI app to our Django app. We go to our web browser and refresh. And if you followed along and you've done all the steps up to now, you should see a page that looks roughly like this. Let me get to a normal size. Here, it should look like this. This is the base starting point for any Django project. This little rocket launching that says the install works successfully. Congratulations. This is how we know we have our web app up and running at a very basic level, and we're ready to start doing some more to it. You got the same page, Erica? Awesome. That's the checkpoint. You made a web app. Course is over. Everyone go home. No, so this is the very beginning. This is, if you can get to this point, this is the absolute focus checkpoint for today. Hiding some of the sensitive information as a best practice is something I'd like to get to with the remaining time we have in class, but I want to make sure everyone can get to this point at a minimum. Is anybody stuck or have questions on how we got to this point right here?
Got there okay. The only concern I have is went really fast. I'm not sure I could replicate it by myself.
Okay, okay.
But your notes probably cover this step by step, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the idea. Yeah. Yeah. Is that it is going to be fast when we do it in class. I do really want to hammer home that idea that I don't expect anyone to remember all this stuff the first time. Do this today. Try it a couple more times once we do all the things that we do up through tomorrow. Take the days between tomorrow and next Tuesday to like just practice this a couple of times and get to this point 2 or 3 times until you know it a little bit better. You know, do that
So
kind of
there's a
stuff.
test tomorrow, right?
Yeah, test is tomorrow.
Okay.
You all better pass, or you're going to be removed forcibly from your own home. Tell me what's up.
So everything you're doing now is gonna be in that list you sent out earlier, so we can just go by that list too, because I kind of fell behind.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. If you want to try to catch up now, we got time for it. If you're stuck somewhere, but the list is there. I don't want to rush this off. Again, we got another 30 minutes of class, and the covering of sensitive data in an environment file is a absolute best practice. It's a great place. We should get through it, but I want to make sure that we can get to here first, and then if you have to follow documentation for that piece, we can. So it's up to you. If you want to, if we can debug together, or
I'm on the Bash console right now, and I'm in the environment slash my site, and then I kind of fell off after that.
okay. Well, again, so we take a few minutes to try to get you unstuck. If you like, I can hop into your thing and have a look.
That'd be great.
All right, let's do it. Erica, you're real quick. You had a question in chat about steps similar to install Django on machine. Yes, up to now the steps are going to be exactly the same. The only difference to see this rocket launching is you're going to run what's just a local development server, and so you're just going to run Python manage.py run server, and it'll spit this up in at local host, probably port 8,000 most likely. But if you just type in localhost, you should be able to see it. But the steps, yeah, largely be the same. Michael, so you had a question?
Yeah, the question I have is what we just did basically set the initial web framework.
Yes. So
Okay.
we have now the Django framework, which is going to allow us to build more of the pieces, and we're going to use all these built-in files and things like that we have in. There's not that many there. Let's see what's in my site, the inner side. So this like urls.py file. It serves a very specific function on mapping and routing the URLs. So what this Django is going to do for us is all the parts that handle the HTTP interactions are already built into Django. Somebody already wrote it. And like the story behind it is it was like newspaper people that when they were moving newspapers from paper to the internet, they came up with Django to be able to put those formats quickly up there and have content just kind of run into it. So that's what Django was made for originally. And what we've done is just set that up so that we can now use that to make whatever application we want. We're going to do a different, we're not going to do a newspaper, but it's the same principles. So what we've set up is the beginning framework for that.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. And then Tommy, let's have a look at where you are. This is you right here, the Tommy09. That's your user?
Yes.
Cool. All right. Let's go. You got this console open. Let's have a look. Okay. So Yeah, man, I think looks like you're in good shape here. You got a virtual environment, you got all those things. Let's go have a look at your web tab, man. I don't see anything glaringly broken on this side. All right, so then it looks like you just need to enter your paths to your source code here, which is easy. That's just adding like this slash home slash, just put my site at the end of this, and then copy that up to these two places. So it'll be in the same place, right?
Nice. Wait, uh, as I'm doing it, it'll start like appearing on your screen too, right?
Maybe. Let's see. If you save it, it might. And then you have to do the same with adding the path to your virtual environment, which again, which should just be slash home slash your username and then VN.
My
See, there we
site.
go. Okay. So, yep.
Okay, that's
So cool. And then make so,
warning. No virtual lead detector at this path.
wait, no virtual environment detected this path?
Yeah, when I put in the virtual ENV.
Doesn't the
All right.
source code and the working directory have to match?
Yeah, that's a good call. I was going to say before we move on, those don't match yet. You know, make sure that on working directory, Tommy, you also put my site after the slash here. So these should be exactly the same source code and working directory. And then while you do that, I'm going to look at real quick back in your console. Oh, yeah, no, you don't. No, you do have a virtual environment. But it looks like you may not have it. Oh, yeah, there you go. Okay. And that is your virtual environment because you have it activated. So are you spelling it right when you try to add it to your web tab?
Mm,
Because it should be just the same or slash home slash username.
That's my site.
No.
Oh, wait.
Aha. That's the problem. Not slash my site on there. That's where the hook is. So it's just in your root. It's outside of the my site project, right? So I guess Erica, to your question earlier, when you're asking if you could put this anywhere, you don't want to put it inside of your project folder. So it's going to be outside of that. So it's not going to be in the same place as your source code and working directories. So that should just be slash home slash username slash VENV. And then once
Mm,
and then once you get that updated, I'm gonna
Okay.
go get that updated. All right, let's see. I'll refresh it on my side real quick. And then did you make the changes to the WSGI file? Yeah, that looks good.
Not, not yet.
Let's see. Let's have a look. Because yeah, the only other thing, yeah, you're still gonna have your pure WSGI, so you got to change that out to doing this Django section. So you're 79 to, or I'm sorry, 76 to 89. You got to uncomment those, and you got to take out all this stuff on 19 to 47.
So for Django 76 to 89, I just highlight all that and delete it, right?
No, don't delete this stuff. Don't delete the Django stuff. Highlight it all and then uncomment it. So you hold it like hold down Control and hit slash, and it'll take away all the hashtags.
Controls. Okay.
And then this section, the 19 to 47, do the opposite. Comment all this stuff out because you don't need any of that.
So highlight it to
Mhm.
47 and then control 3.
Or just no, not Control 3, Control slash.
Control slash.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then save that and refresh. Hit this little recycle button up here at the top after you save it, so it'll refresh the source code. No, I don't do that. All right. And then that should do it, hopefully. See if that, go back to your web app and see if that worked. That do it for you? You get the rocket launching?
Um, do I just go into web and open a new tab?
Yeah, you can do that. And then your link will be right there at the top. It's just your username, .pythonanywhere.com.
Do I just reload it?
Yep. Just refresh it and this should work. All right, I'm gonna let you see if that's working. And let's get everyone up. If not, we can hang out a few minutes after, but we got like 20 minutes. Plenty of time to get through the hide and the other one. Did that work for you though, Tommy?
Um, how do I get to the new page with the rocket? I'm just kind of stuck on.
Yeah, so if you just go to it should just be on your actual website. So if you go to web, and then it should just be this link right here. You just click on it. Oh, nice. You need TommyAnywhere.com. Disallowed host. So we didn't do the last steps. You got to add your host name, this username.pythonanywhere.com to your settings.py file.
This.
So copy that.
Go into my files.
Yep, files, and then it's my site, inner my site, and then settings.py. And then scroll down to allowed hosts. And then
I went to my site, but then when the files open up, I only have a manage.py file.
yeah, go in. There's another my site directory inside of that directory. So there's two my site directories. So there's my site, and then there's my site inside of it. And that's where the settings.py is.
Okay, and then I'm in there now.
Yep, row 28. Put in this inside of this list, add a string. So inside of quotation marks that has just your username.pythonanywhere.com.
That's the strings only will go up to 23.
Say what?
I think I went to the wrong one. Oops.
Possibly. Yeah, you should be in your settings.py file. All right, that's the last step you need to do. Flag me if you get stuck again. We can spend some more time after. I'm gonna crack on getting everybody else moving with this moving the secret key off to something else. And then once you get this going though, man, that's the last step you absolutely got to get. And then it's moving the secret key out is like kind of bonus, but good to do. So we're all gonna move on with that. Let me know if you're still stuck though, okay?
Okay, we can move.
Cool. So yeah, finish that little piece though. Let me know if it works. All right. So what we're going to do is we are also, everyone else, going to go into that same file, that settings.py file, and we're going to set up a way to mask our secret key. And this is kind of an optional thing to do, but it is definitely a best practice. So the first thing we're going to do is at the top of let's go into our settings.py file. Get this out of the way. So we go my site, inner my site directory, settings.py. All right, so the very top of this, we have to import a package that we're going to use to access things out of our environment. So we're going to do from environ import, and then the class env. It's capital env because it's a class that we're importing. And then we're going to, as we did with our example classes, we need to instantiate this class and do some stuff with it. So I'm going to go down to line 23. Right on, Justin, no worries. So I'm going to go down to line 23. And I'm going to make some space right above our secret key. Doesn't really matter where we put this, but I'm going to use env as the variable name, all lowercase, and I'm going to set that as, I'm going to set it as an instance of our env class. So env is with the equals sign, our capital env with the open and close parentheses and nothing inside of it. Now that we have that, we have, like any class, we got methods that we can use. So the built-in methods in our environment class are things that give us the ability to read files that have environment variables listed there. And that's where we're going to put our secret key to keep it safe, and we don't have to list it in plain text right here. Even though it doesn't really matter for our development purposes, this is what you should always do at the beginning of a thing to hide this sort of thing, and is useful for other environment variables. So we're going to reference our env variable, so lowercase env, and then use dot notation to do one of the methods. And we're going to do read underscore env, open parentheses. I'm going to go ahead and just close the parentheses. So we got them both. So inside our parentheses, so our method call is read env. So env dot read env, all lowercase with an underscore between read and env. And then we're going to say env underscore file. So what file do we want to read? And this is a keyword argument. So we're going to set it to a string that will have a directory location with a file in it. So it's going to be my site. So this is referencing the inner my site, the same place where our settings.py file is. So it's going to be alongside of our settings.py file. And we're going to call it .env. This is a convention. This is what people typically use, but it's just going to be in your local system, so you can call it really whatever you like. But the dot makes it hidden, ignored, number of things, but we want to keep it in our inner my site directory alongside of our settings.py. So the same directory as this, and this is how we're going to reference it, my site slash .env as a string. All right, now one more change that we got to make before we move on. And I'm going to take the thing that we want to remove out of here. So this whole secret key string, including the quotation marks, all of it. I'm going to pull this out, just hit cut. And in its place, I'm going to put env. And now we can reference things out of that file. Now that we've read that file on line 25 for me, we can reference the names of our environment variables as strings. So we're going to call this all uppercase because we're calling it a constant, even though, again, this is just a variable. Django underscore secret underscore key. Arbitrary name, you can call it really whatever you like, but this is something descriptive so that we know what it's called later. Right, so now we're going to save this. It's the last change that we should have to make here on our settings.py file. We're going to keep this open in case we got to come back, in case we did something wrong or whatever the case may be. And we're going to go over to, I'll open up here our file navigator GUI, because we're going to make this .env file now. So if navigate down to our my site, and then enter my site. So next to our settings.py file, so we have this files thing, and we're going to do up here, we're going to do .env to make a new file. And when I hit enter on this, or I click this new file button, it's going to take me into the text editor directly. And so we're in /home /username /my site. So inner level my site to my site directories .env. And then in this, we're going to use that same on just line one, first thing, no spaces, no indentations, nothing. We're just going to do Django underscore secret underscore key, the equal sign with no spaces. And then I'm just going to paste that string that I had from before, the one that came standard in. If you didn't save that from before, you could put any string in here. It does not matter. Again, it doesn't have to be super secure. It doesn't have to be a hyper secure hashed, key set or anything like that for these development purposes. So you could just use the insecure one that comes along with it just for learning. But make sure that you don't have any spaces between the name, this Django, all caps, snake cased. No spaces after that. No spaces after the equal sign. That's setting this. We'll save this. Now, this should have just refactored things. This should have just moved our secret key out into something else. And now that we've saved this in our .env file, we should be able to close this, and it should work just the same. So I'm going to reload the source code on the browser side. I'm sorry, server side, not browser side. And then I'm going to go back. Don't need my WSGI file. Once that's done loading, we're going to go back to our web app. And this should, something went wrong. Womp womp. Anybody following along? Get that same error? Nobody following along at this point?
Yeah, got this
Enough?
error.
Cool, cool, good. I walked us into that one, man. I want to make sure that we actually look through some of these server logs and check it out. If you were paying really close attention, I called out what I did earlier, and it's in the documentation. Anybody know what I did without going any further? Anybody paying that close attention? Anybody that on the ball? All right, good. Because that would kind of defeat the purpose of the bug that we're gonna have to find. I set this one up as a little bit contrived. It's not always gonna be the case. I will make genuine mistakes as we go, but I want to really show the tools here and how we get to them, right? So this is what happens when it broke. You said something went wrong. We're getting this level of information because in our settings.py, I'll flip back here, right above where we were, the loud hosts, and right underneath secret key, there's this constant called debug. It's set to true. We set this to false when we're in a production level, but when it's set to true, it'll give us more information when something breaks. So while we're developing, we leave it set to true. That's what it's set to default. And in here, there's a way to get to our error logs, right? So it's got server logs and all this other stuff, and it's got some other information. Error log is really the first place that we need to go. And again, if you don't remember how to get to it, it's on the web tab under logs. It's going to be the middle one in between your server and access logs. Error log is the one you want, right? So we're going to click on that and we open this up. This is not a streaming log. So if you look at this and then do some changes, come back to it, you're going to have to refresh it again. The error that you ran into most recently is probably going to be down towards the bottom. And this is what's called a stack trace. So this is the error logs you're going to be running into a lot and digging through our problems. What this does is it goes through it's got the times things were called and what was called and what happened all the way through, starting from right here. This is the first initial error. So it says error running WSGI application. And it says module not found error. And then it shows all the files that it was calling. And this is the place where it kicked it off. This is the first call. And then it goes all the way back through this entire stack, which again, we talked about what a stack is. And this is the original error that caused our problem. Need to install environment. There we go. I was going to say, what is the solution to this? So we need to install, Erica called it out in chat. We need to install environment. Now, what does that mean? Erica, can you expound on that a little bit? Where do we need to install and what is that to install environment? I'll give you a second, assuming you're typing your answer. But anybody else?
Get a package manager to download it. Pip install.
Yes, it's exactly what we need to do. So in our console, which I now apparently have not left open anywhere, we get back to our console and we need to install that environment thing into our virtual environment, that package into our virtual environment. So we're gonna go back into our bash console. Hopefully you kept one open. I apparently did not, but now we're back into it and we're going to spell clear correctly our third attempt. And then we're going to do pip install, and then it is going to be not just environ, that's the general package that would be used. There's a specially tuned version for Django that's called lowercase Django dash environ. And you could have done this in the beginning, right? So we skipped this step on purpose. We could have just, when we installed Django, we could have just done pip install Django space Django environ, and that's what it has in the documentation. You can install multiple packages with one call. And now we did that. We installed that package, so we should be good. Now, hopefully, that alleviates our problem once we reload our source code on any page that has the little reload button, either on the web page or one of these text editors. Doesn't have to be in your .env. We're done with that anyway. But now that we did that, it should have cleared up our issue. And now we should be back to this point while hiding our sensitive information like secret keys into an environment file. So do we install in the my site folder or does it matter? So that is a good question, Erica. This does not matter. I'm going to go back to the console. What directory you are in when you do pip, right? It matters what environment you're in. So right now I happen to be in my site directory here but I could go to like any directory and run pip and it'll still be in my environment. Does that make sense? So it doesn't matter, I guess, is the most direct answer to your question. So I'm in the my site folder when I did that pip command just because that's where I'm doing most of the other work, but I could just as easily run it from here. And it'll still list it because we're in this environment here still. And even though now I'm in my root directory, I can still run pip commands and it'll still add just to that environment. So the virtual environment, even though it is a directory, is not dependent on which directory you're in as a working directory or as a like the source code directory. Does that answer your question, Erica?
So I still got the error. I'm wondering, did I load it on the right site? Because you got my site only once. I have it twice on my bash.
Okay. You want me to hop in and have a look? Because there should be two. There should be two my sites, but there is like this is the top level one that's just home slash username slash my site. But then there's also this internal one, right? That's got, it's my site, and this is where your .env file should be, is in the inner my site.
It didn't show anything. It's in lists. Yes.
ls. Oh, so because it's a hidden file, you have to put the -a flag to show all, and it'll show the hidden
Okay,
files
so
like the dot.
I got the .env there,
Okay, cool.
but when I pop out of this to go to the web page,
hmm
oh, I had to copy a different key, by the way, because I didn't copy the one we had before.
Yeah, it should make a difference which one you use. Just make sure that you don't have any extra spaces in here. Like the Python side isn't going to care if you put a space between this equal sign and the string or the equal sign and the name of the variable.
Yep.
But this text file will, and it'll break if you don't, or if you put a space in there, right? So there should be no spaces.
And so go back to files, double check.
And then anyone else able to get unstuck at that, just the module being not loaded was the solution, or other folks stuck as well.
I'm also stuck. I think I got this something wrong.
Okay. So Michael, Lucci, one of you guys, you want to go through as debugging together? I can hop in and look at your
Sure.
files.
Sure.
Okay. All right, I'll go with Michael first because he asked first, and if he's open for it, then we'll do that, and then maybe Lucci, if that doesn't solve your problem, we can do you next. All right.
Sounds
So let's go first with the web tab. So I'm in Michael Sobeys now, and I'm going to hit up this. You see, something went wrong. So it broke, but it doesn't give me access to the logs because I'm not you. There's some manner of security here. So I'm going to roll down to where we can get logs. Here we go. Error log. And then, like I said, I'm going to scroll all the way down to the most recent log. And yep, this says that you're running into this error. So I don't think you've installed that package. So maybe you just need to do that step. Let's go double check. I'm going to go back to your console and have a look.
Okay.
So consoles. All right.
It's one up.
All right, cool. So let's do pip list. Just see what you got. Oh yeah, you got it in there.
Yeah, it's there.
Cool. So then it might be, did you remember to reload on the server side?
No.
That might be the only step you missed. Try that. If that gets you unstuck, because I don't see anything obvious as to why it wouldn't work up to this point.
Reload on the server side.
Yeah, so you can either do that on
From
your
files.
no, you can do that either on your web tab. There's this big reload button right here. Is the easiest way to get to it. But then
Oh, you know what? I didn't do that.
yeah, that'll do it. Let me know if that gets you unstuck.
Oops.
It takes a sec, but
Oh, bad request 400. Yahoo.
ooh, that's odd.
Ooh.
That solved it for me. I think the reloading.
The reloading was reloading it?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, bad request 400. Okay, so that's definitely interesting. Let's see what's going on with that. I got the same thing. All right, so Luigi, I'm glad that solved your problem. Michael, I'm upset that it didn't solve yours. All right. So this is saying the same error. It's not saying anything different. And you reloaded and it worked and it didn't say there was anything wrong when you reloaded?
I did the reload from that page there.
Huh.
I'm wondering if the file got reloaded, if it took.
Yeah, but a bad request is making me think. Let's check in your settings up high. Maybe there's something off there. If not, it could be in your WSGI file. Let's check the settings first and see if maybe something went wrong in that. Yes. I see the problem. Anybody else see the problem as I kind of scroll through here?
Mhm.
It's right. It's like staring me in the face without actually being visible. Hold up. I'm gonna flip between. So this is yours. This is yours right here.
Is it
And
the
then
secret key?
no, this is
Oh, the
mine.
debug equals true.
No, no, you need that. You definitely need that too. Like you want that in there too, but you're also missing this is the most critical piece. That's why you're getting that 400 error because you don't even have this allowed hosts at all. It looks like you erased everything above installed apps. It's like you're missing these two lines entirely. The debug equals true and the allowed hosts with your domain name. You see what I mean?
I got secret key
Yep.
equals yeah, right.
Yeah, you need this debug equals true, and you need most critically, you need this allowed hosts to point to your domain name like
How did
this.
that happen?
What's that?
How did that happen?
You must have just erased it accidentally. Maybe when you were getting the secret key out of here or something like that, you accidentally selected too much and just hacked it all out. Anybody else able to get to that point or stuck somewhere? I know we're a couple minutes over, but
This is where I put my name and pythonanywhere.com.
yes. So it should look in the same pattern as the one that I have up here on the screen where it's got username.pythonanywhere.com as a string inside of that list.
Yeah, I'm can't figure mine out.
Okay.
It the only thing that it says on the bug is you may need to add allowed hosts, but mine's good. I know that's for sure.
Okay.
Um,
You want me to hop in and have a look at yours?
yeah, if you don't mind.
Sure. Sure, sure, sure. What is your Oh, there you are. General. Yep.
Yep.
Cool. I appreciate y'all using things I can recognize. That's really helpful. Okay. So let's start. If it's saying I will believe that you know how to read an error log because you just read it to me, and I'll go into your stuff here. So my site, and then my site, and we'll go into settings.py. Aha. What's this telling me? Okay. That's a problem.
So I can't figure out why this error is coming up undefined.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely right. Um, Erica, you nailed it as to what it is in the chat. So if this isn't defined, the class isn't defined, where did we get the class from? Did we define it ourselves? We didn't write any classes today, right? We didn't.
No.
No, we imported it. So you have to import this class up here. I did it up here. Just again, by convention, import statements go usually at the top of your settings file or whatever file you're importing to.
Okay.
And so here I can pull up the example. So you have something to look at. Excuse me. Settings. Right here. So you do from and then environ that module that we didn't import to break everything. And then we do import and then the class name capitalized with no parentheses.
I see.
So then that should solve that problem. Let me see what your error log says. You got it working, Mike? Nice. Excellent.
Environ. Import.
Yeah, that should solve at least this error that I'm seeing is your last one. It looks like that's the problem. Yeah, the env is not defined.
So let's refresh.
Yeah.
Okay. So new error says 502 backend.
What does that mean? Nice. Breaking stuff in novel ways. I like that. So wait, did you reload?
Yeah.
You reloaded the server side code and then you
So
refreshed.
I refreshed the debug.
Wait, hold on. This is what I was trying to do.
Let's take a look.
I got yours working, man. It worked for fine on mine. So
Oh, I did?
yeah, I'm at your thing right now. So maybe you just need to refresh your
Okay.
browser.
Yeah, there it goes. I must have refreshed it too fast.
Nice. Yeah, it takes a second to reload on the server side. It takes a good frustrating couple of seconds. You gotta like take a breath. But nice.
Oh, quick question, Jeff.
Sure.
I went through the notes you sent out, and the way that it goes through this setup is slightly different than what you just did.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to replicate what's in the notes, should we create a different virtual setup?
No, the only big difference it should be, I may have pulled out, I'm looking at it now. I may have pulled out like I put all the changes that we do in settings into one place so that you only opens the settings file one time and like import all the packages in one shot instead of going back and forth. We did some of that to be demonstrative today to like show how things work. You shouldn't have to do anything differently. Like the virtual environment itself should be set up the same way. If you want to keep the VM that you have now and just practice the other parts, you could do that. If you want to make another virtual environment, you could call it something else. But it
Okay.
should be the same steps, roughly. Well, not roughly. It should be exactly the same steps.
All right, I'll do that. Plus read through the code that is in the Django.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, so we're going to start tomorrow kind of building off of this and talk about how to route some URLs and put up some pages that we're going to use down the line. But absolutely, tear this down, do it again, practice a few times as you have time.
Okay, and be ready for the test tomorrow.
Be ready for the test. Yeah, test
All
tomorrow.
right.
All right, y'all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yep. See you
Thank you.
tomorrow.
Thanks.
Bye.